over as much as we possibly can. Try to get it all in one video, get a cohesive timeline, try to give you guys, gals, y'all, exactly what you want to hear in terms of lore. So, first off, I should share my screen because I want to let y'all know that the entire substance of what I talk about is on Wiki. If you want to know stuff about Magic the Gathering, if you want to read, you don't want to listen to somebody like me just talk, you 1000% can just go and learn everything. You can click on all of these links. You can pull up every single one of these things, and you can learn all the stuff that I'm going to be talking about today. But for the people who don't really want to do all the reading, I kind of want to flesh it out for you. I would love the opportunity to just make a long form video where I'm able to just kind of like connect all the dots that I've been putting together in the YouTube shorts. And to start, from the top, I kind of want to introduce, what is Magic the Gathering? Well, Magic the Gathering is it's all of this. You can just read the bio. However, I don't want to just read it word for word. I want to try to summarize what I feel like the Magic the Gathering universe is. It's a collection of heroes, it's a collection of villains. It's not just one world full of enemies and the best and the worst that a world can offer, but it's also a multiverse. So, an infinite amount of dimensions, an infinite amount of realities. And at one point, we find out an infinite amount of timelines. And so, it's the stories of these characters who are trying their best in a shifting planescape multiverse to find who they are and their place in this this multiverse. Also, the main characters in Magic are called planeswalkers, which are these beings that have the ability to walk through what is called the blind eternities. So, between each of these planes, which are basically like a collection of worlds, right? You have like your base world, and then you might have like some like moons, depending on like what plane you're on, right? There might be some separation of the planetary bodies, but a plane is usually either one world or two worlds, like depending. Mirrodin, for example, is 5 moons, but we never really go to the moon on Mirrodin, right? Anything outside of like that base world is it's isolated in what's called the blind eternities, which is, you can imagine, just space. But there's no like super advanced technology that yet, right, that can just like fly into space in these worlds. Instead, what they focus on is building bridges, like portals. If you think about D&D, where there's like a gate where you can summon like a dimension by dimension space where you can walk from one place in space time into another place in space time. That's where a lot of like the artificers and the creators of Magic spend their time after they've mastered like all the stuff on the plane. They're like, oh, our sensors have detected existences of other, universes. Let's try to create gates to these other places. That's where a lot of like super advanced people in the multiverse end up. And that technology is like in most places almost right there. They actually end up making one on one plane called I forget what the new name of it is. It used to be called Kaladesh, but we don't call it Kaladesh anymore. We call it something new, and I'm sorry I don't remember the name. But there's a lot of super advanced technology, and the planeswalkers are the people who have the ability to walk without any aid, without any technology, through the blind eternities. Basically, they're able to like, make a little like pull. In the best way that like the story has ever described it is when you planeswalk, you feel a little tug in your gut. And so like they just have this like special feeling that they have, and they use it, and they open up a gate, and only they can walk through it into like a different place. And so they can jump timeline, or not really time, but like time space, right? They can jump from one place to another place. And that's why they're called planeswalkers. And so the story revolves around like these certain characters and their adventures and their mistakes. A big part of Magic lore is characters trying to do things right, and then their good intentions end up helping the bad, like the big bad, in the end win. So it's all about like, you know, the hubris, the reality of like trying your best and not always succeeding. Let me make sure this is all working. Okay, cool. So yeah, so the first thing that I want to talk about is the plane of Dominaria. So the magic story is based on Dominaria. The ancient Dominarians are called the Thran. It existed long. The Thran civilization existed long before most other um, beings or most other civilizations that have come to be formed on it. We gotta find a Thran. Thran. I would like to show you the Thran. The Thran. So the Thran were like so the Thran. The Thran were basically the super advanced artificers that existed. They were basically the fill-ins after the Numina fell. So the Numina were like the ancient people who like ruled through like like arcane like deep ancient magic, like not like super intelligent magic, but like really powerful ancient like eldritch magic.
Check the water's back on.
All right, sorry. So basically the Numina were like the ancient power, like people who held the power. They were the oldest civilization on Dominaria. And then when the Thran rose to power after the Numina began to infight with each other, and then they started to ultimately collapse when it was 5 colors of the Numina civilizations, and they all fought with each other for power. The Grixis colors teamed up to destroy the Selesnya colors, go figure. And then the Grixis colors just started fighting with each other for power until the entire civilization collapsed. And then the Thran rose up from the ashes of that, and they began to rule. They were founded on Tesseri, and then you were able to they were able to like basically figure out almost everything that they could about the world. They like had like the most advanced technology that like even to this day the Dominaria has ever seen. Like there are things about the Thran that like artificers on Dominaria forever, like for all of the rest of time, have been studying to try to like learn a little bit of what they knew. Yawgmoth was one of the Thran, except he was more interested on, you know, power and growing his control over the rest of the Thran Empire. So much so that he poisoned someone, and then because he was the healer, they brought him to heal, and then he just turned him into like one of the original Phyrexians, and he slowly started to like work on people, and these people he would like perfect, and then he would hide them in a place like under the city until eventually he had an army, and that was like the original Phyrexian army. And then the Thran like they beat him up and they threw him out, and he was super angry, and then he perfected this thing called Phthsis, which was power stone radiation. However, the people who were in constant contact with it would slowly turn into what we know as the Phyrexians. And so he began to purposefully infect people with this disease, and he sowed a bunch of seeds of deceit into the Thran Empire, and then he tried to just destroy the entire city. The Thran had to fight the Phyrexians, and the the Phyrexians ultimately lost, and the Phyrexians were and Yawgmoth were locked into um like a like a planescape where they would not be able to ever escape. However, Yawgmoth had people who were working for him, and you know how Yawgmoth is still today. He's manipulating and controlling those who are fiending for power. But yeah, so that's like the original big bad that we think of when we think of like Yawgmoth. We think of like the giant, like um god of Dominaria, right? The god of death, like not literally death, but the person who created Phyrexia, the person who created new Phyrexia, Pharesis, like all of this stuff that like is some of the scariest stuff, possibly scarier than the Eldrazi, was created by one guy who was power hungry and he was experimenting. And so that's like the original like fight on Dominaria is the Thran. And then after the Thran, then we go back to uh like 1,000 years in the future, like a couple thousand years in the future. The Thran have like fallen off, all their artifacts have been destroyed or buried, and Urza is digging in a mine with his brother Mishra. Next page. Urza, I would like to see Urza. There's a lot of Urzas. Okay. Oh no, 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 no. So Urza. So this is what yeah, exactly. This is Yawgmoth. This is what we think of when we think of Yawgmoth. Urza was digging in a cave with his brother, and they found two stones, the Might Stone and the Weak Stone. Now, the Weak Stone was taken by the older brother, and the Might Stone was taken by the younger brother. Now, they realized that the stones would only work if they had them together. And so they fought over who would have the stones, and they weren't able to figure it out, so they went their separate ways, and then they developed armies. And Mishra leaned into the Phyrexian power. He, brokered deals with the Phyrexians to make himself more powerful, and eventually he was completed, perfected by Yawgmoth. And Urza had to create these massive armies of constructs that were powered by the Weak Stone, and they fought. And in the end, Urza had to kill his brother Mishra because the Phyrexians corrupted him, and that's ultimately why all this happened, was because they were fighting over who would control the stones, when in reality, the stones, when put together, were just the key to unlock the Phyrexians. So as soon as Urza won and he put the stones together, he unknowingly loosened the portal that allowed Yawgmoth and the Phyrexians who were waiting, like preparing like engines for like they were like literally like imagine, right? You're sealed away by an ancient Thran civilization who's like the most technologically advanced civilization in like all of possibly space-time, right? In all universes at this point. They get locked away and they're like really, really focused on like perfecting war and like invasion and destruction. And so like they've been focusing on building siege engines and war machines in the anticipation of like this exact thing happening for like eons. And then like a brother's squabble loosens the portal. Gix is sent in to like sow deceit, create sleeper agents, turn people towards the ways of Phyrexia, further loosen the portal, open it up wide enough so that they can send siege engines onto onto the plane of Dominaria with with the goal of literally superimposing the plane of Phyrexia from where it is on top of Dominaria. And in the fight to keep that from happening, they like break space time. Like Urza and his friends break space time, and then they create a bunch of like rifts in time space that fracture all of the infinite universes. And so there's a lot of like sacrifices that have to be made in order to try to fix all of that. And in the end, Urza detonates a Silex to try to like blow off to blow away all of the Phyrexians on like that continent where they were invading. However, all it did was create an ice age and destroy the part of the Phyrexians that were invading. Then he has to like re-sacrifice. So like there's like two other people who have to sacrifice their sparks to try to like A, close a time rift, and B, revive friends. Then Urza in the future again has to, with Karn, take the Mightstone and Weakstone out of his head, has Venser do it, put the Mites from the Weakstone. It's either Venser or Gerard Capuchin. Put the Mightstone and the Weakstone in Karn, in Karn, allowing Karn to become the legacy weapon, and then detonate basically the legacy weapon to destroy Phyrexia, killing Urza, killing Gerard Capuchin, and then turning Karn into a planeswalker. And so like this is all to like try to destroy the Phyrexians who are invading Dominaria. And that was all created by this guy Yawgmoth, who just wanted to be in charge of the fucking Thran. And so like that's like the point of the Brothers' War is, you know, they were fighting over these two stones that were really meant to be kept apart, but they wanted more power, so they decided to put them together. And yeah, so like greed and like jealousy caused all that. So during the original Phyrexian invasion, when the Phyrexians are like invading with these siege machines, this guy Teferi decides that even though he's from like the most technologically advanced continent, right? The continent of Johira, Zalfir. The continent of Zalfir is like the biggest continent in the terms of like power. Like on Dominaria, it was like the main fighting force. And so even so Urza was anticipating that a lot of Zalfir's forces, let me see, benefited from magical strength. They pioneered the 5 colors of mana on Dominaria and escaped the ravages of the Blast, Ice Age, and the Flood Ages because Teferi was like, actually, you don't want to fight, and blinked them out of existence. It possessed a large standing army of knights and was constantly squabbling because of like nobles, dumb nobles. It was home of Teferi, and it was insane because Teferi actually pioneered the whole creed system on Dominaria, which were called guilds. Which is I think this is the earliest term or use of the word guilds, even though it doesn't apply to what we technically think of as guilds. Now, he was a court mage, but he fell off it fell out, but he doesn't talk about how he fell out of favor with the court. Now there's like a bunch of succession stuff, but when the Phyrexians invade, Zalfir's like, okay, we got this. They're super advanced, but we're super advanced. We got strong mages, and we're gonna body these Phyrexians. And then Urza's like, yeah, we're gonna do this together. We got this. Teferi's like, actually, I think that you guys are gonna get bodied by the Phyrexians. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna blink out your entire continent into like a pocket dimension where the only way to get to you is through this tiny little rift in space-time that I'm gonna leave right in the middle of where your continent was. So he goes bloop, because remember he's a time mage, so he can just bloop. So he bloops him out. It's called phasing out. So he phases out the entire continent. I can just imagine all the warriors being like, "What?" And then just like they don't exist, right? And so like he puts them in a pocket dimension of time where time goes very, very slow. And Urza's like flabbergasted because Urza's like, wait, now now we're gonna get bodied by the Phyrexians. And they do. They get bodied by the Phyrexians, and only with a lot of sacrifice are they able to stop them. Then the issue is in the future, all of these rifts have to be closed. And so this dude, Leshrac, manipulates Jeska to go around closing these rifts. And the first one that he points her to is the Zalfrin Void Rift, which when she closes, seals off that continent in that pocket dimension forever. Teferi then like journeys back there one day and then realizes that it's not there and then like cries. He's just like, why my hubris? And so yeah, there's like another. Jessica also has to sacrifice her soul at the very end of her story, because she has to close like the biggest rift, which was said to cover the entire sky. Can you imagine a time rift that's as large as the sky? And she's just like, after being turned into Phage the Untouchable, fighting Bolas, losing the Bolas, turning into Chroma, a literal god, planeswalking around and learning about stuff, then getting killed, separated by her brother, reborn as Jessica the Planeswalker, planeswalking with Karn. Then she decides, after she's a planeswalker, that all of the rifts in the multiverse are her fault because she was the one dimension hopping as a god, which, like, it isn't true. That's not the reason the rifts existed. That was definitely not her fault. But she decided to sacrifice her life to be selfless. To be selfless, she decided to be selfless, sacrifice her spark to close all of the infinite time rifts in all of the infinite realities, and that's like amazingly cool. Then, like, there's a lot of stories about that specific thing happening where people who aren't directly responsible for things, or they are, take responsibility and just sacrifice themselves in order for the greater good, to fix the greater good. And it's really humbling to see in all these awesome stories. So that's kind of the story behind Zalfir, why it's phased out, why Teferi is really sad. Because until much later in like the recent time, in the recent story timeline, uh, Ren from Ren and Six, after the Phyrexians invasion, the third Phyrexian invasion, um, Ren helps Teferi reopen the pocket dimension and save Zalfir, returning it back. So Zalfir's back in like modern time, but in what we're talking about, it's lost for probably another like 150 years until that point in the timeline. So now we've talked about the Dominarian invasion by Phyrexia. We've talked about the Brothers' War. Now, before the Brothers' War, there was something that happened in the primeval birthing of the world. When Dominaria was still fresh as a planet, right, as an orbital body accumulating mass and solidifying, the Dragon was the progenitor of all dragons, and what he did was he was basically the embodiment of like the the energy of the plane, right? So that you have like this brand new world and it's got like power and resonance in it. And from like the strength of the land comes this giant dragon called the Dragon. He's like the first thing that's ever happened on Dominaria was like there was trees and oceans and mountains, and then a dragon flapped its wings. The Dragon like rises into the sky and is like flying around Dominaria. He is the only thing there. He's basically a god, and with each flap of his wings, dragons fall from his wings. And the strongest of these dragons were called the Elder Dragons. Um, there was Murivia, Sal, Arcades, Sabbath, Chromium. We're just going to do first names. There was Murivia, Arcades, Chromium, Lividius, Nicobolas, Palladium Mors, Piru, Ravus, Rubria, Ugin, Vivictus, and Mazdi. There were others, but those died. So the ones that are really important are Palladium Mors, Arcades, Sabbath, Chromium, Ugin, Nicobolas, Vivictus. So those six are basically the original Elder Dragons that will be alive from this point in ancient history to modern day Dominaria. They're still alive as Elder Dragons. They rule their respective places on Dominaria, and they really aren't questioned, right? Arcades Sabbath is the banned dragon, and he heads a defensive fort where he it's a bastion of strength and intelligence. Chromium is a shapeshifter, enjoying to live amongst humans without revealing his presence as an ancient elder dragon. Palladium Mors is the strongest, the no Vivictus Asmati would kill me for saying that Palladium Mors is stronger. However, as the Naya Elder Dragon, just pure fury and strength is all that she embodies. Whereas Vivictus Asmati is very strong, but more focused on, power and ambition, control. Then there's the two twins, the smallest of the Elder Dragons, Nicobolas and Ugin. Nicobolas, a ambitious and very determined to prove himself dragon, and Ugin, his twin brother, who was curious, kind, patient. They both fell together, and upon falling, they watched one of their um, brethren be killed by a pack of wild animals and a pack of humans, actually. Um, and they learned immediately that it was a world of two things were learned. Ugin saw this and was afraid. Ugin learned that, you know, there were things out there that would try to kill you just for being what you were. And Nicobolas took from this that the world was made of hunters and hunted, and you have to be a hunter, not to be hunted. They were both really inspired by the sun. They looked up to the sun. Nicobolas especially remarked that the sun was like uh, the sun was like a um, proud, fiery ball in the sky, uh, and he wanted to be like the sun. He wanted to be strong and big and high in the sky. And so Nicobolas and Ugin worked together to hunt and to train. They were actually hunting partners, and they were very, very skilled in hunting together and adventuring together until slowly their personalities developed in a way where they drifted apart. Ugin naturally wanted to have a more relaxed and laid back approach. He wanted to read, he wanted to live in civilization and take part in debates and talk, and he definitely didn't want to fight. Whereas Nicobolas was all about ambition, and he wanted to control armies and have possessions and invade and take land. And they went their separate ways after a squabble, and one day the place that Ugin was residing in, a library, came under siege by Nicobolas's armies. And Ugin had to face Nicobolas, and Nicobolas beat up Ugin really bad, and he actually almost killed Ugin. In this moment, Ugin's planeswalker spark ignited, and he flew away. Um, he thought that his brother had died, and the experience of losing his brother made Nicobolas even more savage, even more angry. He decided to use this as the excuse to take over all the lands of Dominaria. Meanwhile, Ugin, as a spirit dragon, was in a place called the Meditation Realm, and he was learning what his newfound abilities could do. He traveled from the spirit realm or the meditation realm to different planes, learning and exploring until finally returning back to Dominaria in a flash before Bolas. And Bolas kind of freaks out a little bit. He's like, "Are you a ghost? You're my brother. My brother's dead, and it's really good to see you. Are you alive? Like, have you been hiding? Where have you been this whole time? Come on, I've been really sad." And Ugin reveals that actually, you know, you're here playing God on this plane, but actually there's an infinite number of planes, and you'll never, he kind of rubs it in his face and says, you'll never have the ability to, find out everything that you could know. There's so much in the multiverse that you'll never get to experience because you're going to be stuck here forever. And then he planes walks away. That infuriates Nicobolas to the point where he's like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And he just knows everything that Ugin just said was right. And he's like, I want to follow Ugin. I want to follow my brother. And in that moment, his planeswalker spark ignites and he follows after Ugin and joins him in the meditation realm. And they fight again. And this time, Nicobolas does kill Ugin. And he dies in the meditation realm. But then his body melds with the water and his spirit rises as a new planeswalker. And he sneaks away. And now the conflict between them is ever present in the multiverse. Nicobolas is like the big bad. He's a mastermind. He's literally, the term arch enemy comes from Nicobolas because it used to be that whenever you fight Nicobolas, you need more than one planeswalker. So the idea of having a game where one player has a better deck and gets like free abilities, right, is born off the idea that when you fight Nicobolas, he has a bunch of like crazy powers. So you need a bunch of planeswalkers to team up all at once to take him down. Also, in EDH, it's the same idea. If one person has a really busted deck, the rest of you are going to team up because they have a really crazy busted deck. And it's really important to not let one person just snipe each of you individually one at a time. You got to team up and take that person down. Otherwise, you'll all lose the game. But anyways, so Ugin and Nicobolas are constantly scheming against each other. Nicobolas setting up plans to take over the multiverse, and Ugin hearing of these plans and like through spies and like informants, and then creating counter plans to try to like stop Nicol Bolas. One of Ugin's biggest accomplishments is the stopping of the Eldrazi on Zendikar. So Nicol Bolas was possibly like the biggest enemy in the Magic lore until we came across the Eldrazi, which are beings that come from that space in between planes. It's called the Blind Eternities. Now, just like the Ur-Dragon was born from the primeval like birth of Dominaria, the Eldrazi are from the nothingness. They emerge, these massive beings, these titans. They literally form in the nothingness and exist to destroy planes, to reduce the planes back to nothingness. Oh, come on. This is one of the best pictures we have, I guess. And so there's all these lineages from Ulamog, Kozilek, and Emrakul, which are the 3 original Eldrazi Titans. And what they do is they float through the Blind Eternities until they encounter a plane, and then they just like slowly advance across it, turning everything that they touch into dust, corrupting the plane, destroying the plane until the plane is a barren wasteland that then just breaks up and then dissolves, and then it's just more Blind Eternities. And then they just continue to float through the multiverse, destroying everything that they touch. Ugin became aware of this and gained fellowship with Sorin and Nahiri to form the Hedrons, which were the only thing that ever stopped the Eldrazi. They're these big they're these big cone-shaped diamond cones. I don't know how to describe them. These things, they are. Oh, come on! There has to be a better picture. Nope. Basically, they're these floating rocks that are imbued with Eldrazi magic, and they're the only thing that has ever been able to be found to stop the Eldrazi. Ugin is able to use magic, these things. Ugin's able to use magic to manipulate them into forming a trap around the Eldrazi. If oriented a certain way, the magic of the Eldrazi interacts with the Hedron and then rebounds back into the Eldrazi, keeping it frozen in place. But they have to be lined up perfectly, and they have to be built the right way. And so Ugin acquires the help of Nahiri and Sorin from Innistrad, Nahiri from Zendikar, this plane originally. And Nahiri creates the Hedrons and controls them, orientating them around the Eldrazi Titans to freeze them. And Sorin provides a lot of the oomph with being an elder vampire. He's very, very powerful. And Ugin creates the dragon fire and controls the Eldrazi magic, which powers up the Hedrons. Now, the 3 Eldrazi's are frozen in place, locked in stasis, and a mountain is built around them. So the people of Zendikar don't know that they're living with a time bomb. If anything ever moves a Hedron, if anything ever breaks, the Eldrazi would again be released and rampage across Zendikar, destroying it. To this end, Sorin, Ugin, and Nahiri all make a pact, promising that if anything ever happens and the Eldrazi break free, that all of them would return to again lock them up so that they wouldn't rampage across the multiverse, destroying each of their planes. However, the next time that something happens, after Jace, Chandra, and Sharkin break the Eye of Ugin and release Ulamog, now Nahiri is sending out signals to Sorin, sending out signals to Ugin, but no one replies. Ugin is dead. Nicol Bolas has killed Ugin. He's been trapped inside of his Hedron on Tarkir to just barely stay alive, waiting to be reborn. Sorin hears Nahiri's call and ignores it, just wanting to stay. Just want to stay on Innistrad. And so the Eldrazi break out, and Nahiri has to get help from total strangers: Jace, Nissa, Liliana, Chandra, and they fight, and they're able to, stop Ulamog and Kozilek They're able to take down the Eldrazi Titans, but Ulamog is nowhere to be found. Very, very concerning. Concerning that Ulamog is not found. Now, on Innistrad, things start to get very, very interesting after the events of the Gatewatch, which is where that, those three planeswalkers helped Nahiri re-stop the Eldrazi, stop them from destroying Zendikar. Nahiri's a little bit mad, just a little bit mad at Nahiri's a little bit mad at Sorin because he didn't follow through on his thing. So she goes and she's like, "Hey Sorin, what the hell's going on? Why didn't you show up, buddy?" And so what Sorin does is Sorin throws her into the Hell Vault. Hell Vault, Hell Vault, Hell Vault. All right. Hell Vault is something that Sorin created to imprison the big bads of Innistrad. So the worst of the worst. He had all of the biggest demons in there. He had Grizzlebrand, he had Avacyn as well, but he had Nahiri just thrown in there with the biggest demons in the entire plane. And she was falling for what felt like a million years with madness all around her. So when she returned, when this got broken to release Avacyn, Nahiri planes walked away with plans. Now what she did was she returned in the future to reap her vengeance. And so what she ended up doing was she put a bunch of oh, come on. Kozilek. Oh, there should be Emrakul here. Emrakul. There we go. So what she does is she puts these rocks on slowly starts planting these rocks on Innistrad. And she and what she does is she creates basically a portal in the middle of the ocean that channels the land's mana towards a certain point. And what it does is it teleports Emrakul into the sea, and the Emrakul just stays there, infecting the people of Innistrad, slowly corrupting them, until one day Nahiri summons Emrakul out of the water and uses Emrakul to attack Innistrad, using all of the corruption as a decoy. She goes to Sorin, who she had already turned while he was facing the Eldrazi who had been destroying the plane. She went to his manor and killed all of his bloodline, turning them all to stone. And then they fought in Nahiri versus Sorin, and Nahiri actually traps Sorin in rock. And she's like, haha, now you gotta watch Innistrad. While Eldrazi, the Emrakul, rises out of the sea and wades onto... let me see if I can just pull this up. Emrakul Innistrad. Emrakul literally is pulled out of this portal in the middle of the ocean, rises with Nahiri's summoning, and then literally invades Innistrad, just slowly moving across the land to destroy everything. The only city that's safe from the corruption is Thraben, and this is the site of the final battle at Thraben, where all of Emrakul's corrupted are fighting up against the last remaining humans. And Liliana, in an absolute boss move, summons all of the zombies on the plane of Innistrad and throws them at Emrakul, literally creating a zombie wall where Emrakul is actually buffeted and pushed back a little bit even though every zombie that touches Emrakul is turned instantly to dust, the force and the amount of zombies that are just rushing in a giant tsunami wave at Emrakul, like the inertia pushes the Eldrazi Titan back slightly, but it's for naught. Again, none of them are actually touching are touching Emrakul. They're all turning to ash as soon as they create contact. But the amount of them, right? The ones in the back are still pushing the ones in the front. And as the zombies start to wane, Tamio and Jace together pool their magic to use Innistrاد's moon, which was made out of silver, the same thing as the Hell Vault that Nahiri was trapped in, to use an Eldritch spell. Tamio uses an old scroll that she didn't really want to, but she, in the last moment when she sees that Liliana is losing, she uses the scroll. Nissa powers her up through the power of the ley line, and they trap Emrakul in the moon. They stick her in the moon, and that's where Emrakul resides to this day. Afterwards, Tamio reveals that she may or may not have wanted to put uh, Emrakul on the moon for a multitude of reasons. One of them being now Emrakul might have a permanent influence on the plane of Innistrad. The other being she doesn't know where she got the scroll and feels like maybe Emrakul had created it in order to get put in the moon. There's something really unique about silver in Magic the Gathering. It's the only thing that can be transported through a planar bridge. So let's say there's something that you want to send from one plane to another, and you have a machine called a planar bridge. Bridge. So planar bridge is a device that exists in a lot of different like timelines and universes in Magic, and artificers create this thing where they're allowing something to go from one place in space-time to another place in space-time. There's also time machines in Magic, but usually time machines break and then create those time rifts we were talking about that destroy everything and break everything forever. So just like Marvel, just like every other fantasy thing, don't F with time, Morty. Now, the only thing that can successfully go through a planar bridge, besides this super special one that they built on Kaladesh, that can transport literally anything, the only thing that can go through a normal planar bridge, which there isn't really a picture of an old school one. This is the OG from Kaladesh, but there's like another version of a planar bridge, which is a little bit older, that has like different. I think it might be planar gate, but anyways. The only thing that can be transferred through is silver. So what if Emrakul was going into the moon to allow herself to planeswalk to a different place? Or perhaps Emrakul is in the moon and there's something else in the moon, and Emrakul wanted to be able to merge with that thing in the moon. These are all just like brainstorms that that I've had. So Emrakul's in the moon. Ugin has been defeated by Nicol Bolas, and the invasion of Innistrad is over. Now they have to fight Nicol Bolas because he is slowly starting to take over the multiverse. And what they do in among Ket. Now what they do is they go to this place called Amonkhet, where Nicol Bolas has all of these monuments that he's built on the plane. And it's like a place of peace and tranquility where, there's all these different colors and all these different, there's different aspects for each of the colors, right? And what they're trying to do is they're trying to live the most zealous life possible so that when they die, they're able to become, oh, no. They can become eternalized, which is basically they are reborn as Lazotep warriors that are the same as themselves, but they are basically indestructible. They don't have any organs. They don't have to worry about, decaying because they're literally made out of Lazotep. And the way that they sell it to them as people is they say, well, you are persevering for your gods, you're you're doing your best so that the gods will look favorably upon you. And each of the colors has different gods that they respect and worship. And so in the end, it turns out that this plan was all by Nicobolas to suck the souls out of people and to power him up and to create an army of these undead Lazatep Eternals. And uh, oh no. And in the end, the Gatewatch, which is Gideon, Liliana, Nissa, Chandra, and Jace, all go to fight Nicobolas because they believe that he's scheming on this plane to gain power. And he is. They show up and they start to incite, problems right before the hour of devastation arrives, when the fabled end of the world begins. The locust god, the scarab god, and the scorpion god all emerge and kill all of the other gods in a horrific display of brutality, where they go and they murder all of the beloved gods and recycle them as energy. And Nicobolas comes and takes his rightful place as ruler. Oh, come on. There we go. Takes his rightful place as ruler. All 5 of the planeswalkers challenge him, and he makes a mockery of them. Gideon, this indestructible warrior, he bounces off of a wall with his tail the entire fight, like a ping pong ball. The Liliana, the necromancer, he looks at her, doesn't even fight her, fights Jace first because he tries to attack his mind, and Nicobolas is Grixis, so he has mind magic of his own. He goes into Jace's mind instead and breaks it. And Jace has a failsafe where if his mind is ever in jeopardy of being destroyed, he planeswalks away and completely wipes his brain, like mind wipes himself to be safe. So Jace is like within 2 seconds of the fight starting, Jace is already teleporting away. Gideon's being bounced off a wall. Chandra is trying to burn the dragon, and Nissa is like reaching down to get energy from the ley lines. While Nissa is reaching for energy from the ley lines, he turns to Liliana and says, "If you planeswalk away, I won't kill you, and we'll talk about your servitude later." Liliana thinks, sees that Gideon is being bounced off a wall, Jace is already gone, and both the girls are not really going to do much, so she decides to dip. Now it's just Chandra and Nissa fighting a dragon. Chandra's trying to burn Nicobolas, and Nicobolas has a very epic line where he's like, "Are you really trying to use fire on a dragon?" And then Nissa reaches the ley lines, but the ley lines of Amonkhet have been corrupted by Nicobolas. And so they literally reach up and they corrupt her mind and make her like distorted and like I don't want to say evil, but sick. And then she has to planeswalk away before she's like corrupted and taken over. And then it's literally just Chandra and Gideon versus Nicobolas. And Chandra is like burning him. And Nicobolas just puts her flames out. And then she like cries and screams and like planeswalks away. And then he turns to Gideon and he stops bouncing him off a wall. And Gideon's just like laying on the ground exhausted. You think you're like the ultimate warrior. It does nothing. And he uses his magic to pierce the force field that's around Gideon, and he cuts him on his forehead. And in that moment, as soon as he starts to get cut on his forehead, he planeswalks away, crushed. He's been defeated. He hasn't been hurt, like harmed physically in like decades, but Nicobolas just destroyed his will. And so the hour of devastation comes. Nicobolas is triumphant. He almost regains his godhood status. He's now a god pharaoh, with the souls of all those people on Amonkhet. All of these defeated planeswalkers retreat, and they plan for the War of the Spark. Well, I didn't spell that at all. Now, the point of the War of the Spark is Nicobolas has a plan. Nicobolas has created an army of these Eternals, these warriors, these Lazateps. And what they're going to do is they have been given a spell called the Elder Spell. The Elder Spell gives these Reavers the ability, when they kill a Planeswalker, to suck the spark out of the Planeswalker, absorb it into themselves, and then be a transfer conduit of that spark to Nicol Bolas. Nicol Bolas has built this massive citadel where it's a basically a focal point for all of the souls that are absorbed. Citadel. There we go. Bolas has created this massive citadel that absorbs all these sparks and is basically, at the end of the day, going to return him to his pre-mending status as an almost god planeswalker. To reach this end, he has to do a bunch of things. The first thing that he does is he creates a massive portal on the plane. Maybe. Creates a massive portal on the plane. Oh, that's not true. So the first thing he does, is he puts out this beacon into the multiverse, asking for help from planeswalkers, a desperate plea for help from planeswalkers. However, as soon as everybody arrives to help, there's also this giant seal that he puts. There's this thing called the Immortal Sun, which keeps planeswalkers from being able to planeswalk off of a plane. It was developed to trap Bolas, but now Bolas is going to use it to his benefit. Once all of these planeswalkers, like literally almost all the planeswalkers that we know from up to this point in the Magic story, arrive to fight Nicol Bolas, he traps them and then opens a massive portal in the middle of Ravnica. And the armies of the Eternals walk through. Oh, this is a horrible picture, please. Okay, better. A huge portal, and Liliana with this zombie Lazotep army walk through this gate and just lay siege to all the planeswalkers on Ravnica, because this is happening on Ravnica. Now, as planeswalkers are dying, all these sparks are being harvested and given to Nicol Bolas, and he's basically becoming a god again. And what the planeswalkers that are fighting against him have basically two plans. The first plan is for Gideon to attempt to kill him with the Black Blade, which is a mythical sword that is supposed to be able to slay anything. And so Gideon, on a previous mission, picked up this mythical sword from Dominaria by killing a demon lord, and then Demon Lord Benzalok, actually, and then was expecting to be able to use it against Bolas. However, when he comes in with this giant sword to try to kill Nicol Bolas, the sword literally shatters and breaks, and Nicol Bolas laughs at him, and he swats him away. And Gideon is again quite embarrassed. However, the backup plan that they find is right before everybody dies, Liliana decides that she doesn't want to be a puppet anymore. She turns and she uses all of her zombie magic to control the zombies and send them back at Nicol Bolas. This triggers a failsafe in her pact with the Demon Lords, where if she ever betrayed Nicol Bolas, she would forfeit her life and then die. Said here in the flavor text, the moment Liliana defied Nicol Bolas, her contract was broken and her life was forfeit. But she was free to now choose her fate, and she decided it is worth the price. And so she decided to kill Nicol Bolas at the exchange of her own life. And now Gideon, seeing this act of selflessness, which is extremely outside of Liliana's color pie, Gideon sees this and puts his hand on her shoulder and says, no, you're not going to die. I'm going to die. And Gideon absorbs the death and is dissolved in Liliana's stead. And it's an amazing moment of self-sacrifice from Gideon, because he this entire time had been feeling very, very guilty because he was alive and all of his friends, remember, he's like basically invincible, and he had watched all of his friends die over and over and over again. Gideon. So Gideon puts his hand on Liliana's shoulder and absorbs the pact and absorbs the death and is dissolved. Now Liliana, free of her responsibility to, you know, like her curse to die. Now she is free to kill Nicobolas. And so what she does is she turns to the gods, and she, in these giant zombie gods' ears, whispers to them, "You are the gods. He is the usurper. You know what to do." And they, who also are imbued with the elders, with the elder spell, they suck Nicobolas's spark out of his chest after climbing on top of the citadel. And then Ugin comes in and banishes him to the meditation realm, where without a spark, he would never be able to leave ever again. Bolas. It's got to be in here. It's got to be here. Oh, Tyrant. This is the picture. Gideon comes in with the sword, breaks. The hero with the magic sword slays the dragon. Not this time. But then, after his spark is taken away and he's locked in the meditation realm, he's stripped of everything, including his name. And now, Nicobolas, stuck in the meditation realm, is basically out of the magic lore. He has no way of escaping, and he doesn't even know who he is. And now he doesn't understand, basically anything. He's under the watch of Ugin. So we've gone through the Nicobolas saga, the Brothers' War saga. Now there's one or two other things that I think are really important to go through. The Tarkir saga is really cool because remember, Ugin died twice. Once as a dragon, once as a spirit dragon. Once he dies as a spirit dragon, he is the reason why the dragon storms on Tarkir stop and there's no dragons. Sharkan, this young mage planeswalker, is infatuated with dragons, and he wishes that there were some on the plane. After studying the remains and journeying through a billion different planes, he comes into the servitude of Nicobolas. After being controlled and destroyed and tortured by Nicobolas over and over again, he follows Lilianaves, and Lilianaves leads him to Zendikar. Zendikar is where he finds Chandra, and he fights Chandra with Jace down in the Eye of Ugin. He's the reason why the Eye of Ugin is opened, because as a dragon, he breathed fire everywhere, and then Chandra and Jace were attacking him, and the combination of dragon fire, Chandra, and Jace, so 3 planeswalkers and dragon fire being used, released the Eye of Ugin so that the Eldrazi could again roam the land. Now, when he comes back to Tarkir, he sees that he regrets helping Nicobolas and wishes that there was something he could do. But he feels a lot of whispers in his mind, drawing him back to the Eye of Ugin. Now, at the Nexus, which is basically where Ugin's remains are, he journeys through the dragon's skeleton, which takes him back in time to ancient Tarkir, to witness the original fight when Nicobolas and Ugin were fighting the second time on Tarkir as planeswalkers. He witnesses the dragon's death and witnesses that Nicobolas emerges victorious. Wanting to change this, he then he knows that this is when Nicobolas kills Ugin. So he, wanting to change this, rushes in and, using a shard of a hedron that he took from Zendikar, allows it to unfold and completely encapsulate Ugin's dying body, saving him, preserving his life essence, and hiding him from Nicobolas. Later, as soon as he finishes this, his body dissolves from existence because he's altered the timeline and his current form no longer exists. But his eyes open on current Tarkir, a Tarkir with dragon storms and so many beautiful things. He is now Temur. He gained the blue insight from after his time travel, and now he is a dragon mage on the plane of Tarkir. Ugin is able to regain some of his strength and consciousness, slowly plotting to undo what Nicobolas has done. Without Sharkin doing all of this to protect Ugin, the events of War of the Spark wouldn't have gone as well as they did. Because even though they took the spark out of Nicobolas, they wouldn't have had anywhere to put him, and he could have eventually taken the spark from somebody else. Ugin was the perfect person to take him to the meditation realm and lock him in a place where only him and Ugin were able to go. And Ugin was able to stay with him to watch over him forever. So Sharkin is really one of the OGs of this part of the magic story because he's the reason why Nicobolas was allowed to be defeated in the first place. The other character that I really want to talk about a little bit more is Karn. So Karn was Urza's first attempt at creating something to help him time travel. So he was looking for a machine that he could send with a time machine to go and collect information and go make experiments. The issue being the first mission that Karn goes on in his time machine, it breaks and it causes the temporal rift crisis, destroying the Tellurian Academy and basically irreversibly hurting Dominaria and the planes all over the multiverse. It's the reason that event is the reason why Jessica had to sacrifice her spark to close the Taria Rift, the one that was as big as the sky. And that was also the reason why we have so many characters in the magic lore super against time travel, including Karn. Karn witnessed firsthand that it destroyed the school that he was, living at. It killed a lot of his friends, and it messed up the entire multiverse. Remember, he's a planeswalker, so at this point he was using time travel and gates to get to different places. But because Urza was such an advanced artificer, he was able to unlock that degree of magic by studying the Thran. So Karn had already traveled all over the place, and he had seen that these things end up not going the way that you think that they're going to go. Almost always in old magic lore, when people either planeswalk without being a planeswalker, or they time travel, or they really do anything with a good intention, things usually break and go wrong because that's how it is in life too. And that's the beautiful thing about the magic story, is there's a lot of continuity with real life, right? There's a lot of personification in characters like Karn and Urza and Yawgmoth even, where it's there's just ambition, and your ambition can lead you down a road that you really shouldn't be going down, right? Urza made a lot of really bad decisions just because he wanted to learn things and grow and be more powerful. He and then in the ultimate show of disrespect, even though Phyrexia corrupted Urza's brother, in the end, when he builds the spirit bomb basically by extracting Leshrak's spark after he kills two of his planeswalker friends, after extracting Leshrak's spark and putting it in the Silex, he chooses not to destroy it and not to destroy the plane of Phyrexia once and for all, because he wants to learn more from them. And then he surrenders himself to Yawgmoth. There's characters where it would be really straightforward if you were just reading a book, right? If you were just they were just writing a storyline, but they wanted to make sure that a lot of these characters were fleshed out as real as possible. So characters like Urza, right? In those last moments, he gets greedy, right? He gets jealous. And so he wants, as an artificer, as a blue mage, he wants to learn more. And that costs him so much because he's not able to stop the Phyrexian invasion. He's beheaded by Yawgmoth and kept in a library. So he's able to learn, but he's also being tortured and experimented on by the Phyrexians, and he has to watch the Phyrexian invasion of the multiverse, which he could have stopped. And so, yeah, so Karn is the creator of Argentum, right? So he's after the all of the story with Urza. So basically, super high level, right? Urza fights against Mishra, wins. Mishra is defeated. The Phyrexian invasion is stopped. The Ice Age begins after Urza detonates the Silex to destroy the Phyrexians. The Ice Age begins. Urza creates the Time Rifts. The Time Rifts mess everything up. Then Karn and Jehoira, Karn and Jessica have to try to fix the time rifts. Jessica sacrifices herself to fix the time rifts. Then after Jessica has her own lore, which is amazing. I did a bunch of shorts on that. Basically, it's super high level. Jessica is a pit fighter. Her brother Kamal gets sick. Jessica tries to heal Kamal. Jessica is then grievously wounded and taken to a Cabal patriarch who turns Jessica into a unkillable poison machine, who then the Cabal patriarch tries to pit against Nicol Bolas. She loses, but then her brother shows up to try to kill her out of respect for what she used to be. But in that fight, he kills 3 women at the same time, and their collective death melds into Corona, who is the big false god of Dominaria, the embodiment of all magic, who had already been defeated once and was waiting for a chance to return. With the 3 women's death, because they're all very, very powerful, and Jessica's latent planeswalker spark, Corona was reborn and was now a planeswalker. Corona then planeswalked around to a bunch of different places, eventually finding Argentum, where Karn resided, because this was after the Phyrexian invasion. So Karn had already become a planeswalker and was lonely and trying to stay in his moodiness. Corona arrives on the plane. Corona talks to Karn. Corona leaves. And then Corona is defeated later by Kamal, her brother. No, that's not true. Corona is attacked by Kamal. Kamal is overpowered. He puts his sword down, and then Corona is ambushed by her 2 bodyguards, who then kill her and return her back to her previous form, Jessica. Karn then comes and heals Jessica, as she is now just a plain planeswalker. A plain planeswalker. Karn then takes Jessica on a bunch of adventures and mentoring until Jessica comes back and decides, you know what, I could be a super powerful planeswalker, but this time rift thing is not where it's at. So she decides to sacrifice herself to fix the entire plane and the multiverse. And so she sacrifices herself to fix the multiverse. And that's the story of Jessica. And so, Karn, after meeting Jessica, is much more he's been selfless, but after meeting Jessica, he's kind of like, wow, this is just all death. This is all death and destruction. So what he does is he goes back to Argentum and he creates these things called the Mirari. He creates different probes, and he puts a probe on Dominaria to keep an eye on it so that he can planeswalk around and he can do what he wants. But then the probe that he puts on Dominaria is called the Mirari, and it actually has a will of its own. It starts mentally corrupting people and creating discourse and war. Karn then realizes this, comes back and takes the Mirari and puts it back on Argentum, but doesn't destroy it. Instead, decides to morph it into this giant golem called Memnarch. He then leaves in charge of the control of the entire plane. Meanwhile, he planeswalks away, eventually finding that he just can't planeswalk back to Argentum. This is because Memnarch has created these devices after experimenting and building new technologies and trying to create things that would allow him to become a planeswalker, because again, he's sentient. He's watched Karn come and go from the plane as he pleases. He's watched Karn bring him from Dominaria to Argentum. And so Memnarch's life goal is to become a planeswalker. He develops all of the machines that he makes and does all the things that he does with the goal of becoming a planeswalker. Now, he creates these soul traps, which are basically things from Skyrim. I'm joking. They're basically these devices that suck individuals from different planes and put them onto Argentum, because before this point, Argentum was just pure metal, perfection, nothing. So what Memnarch wants to do is he wants to terraform the plane. So he creates these devices called the levelers, which are these big plow things that go around once every 100 years, or once every 100,000 years, something like that. And they just rip up everything. They tear down all the trees. They make everything new. And so that then they can control everything and, terraform, and the plane can evolve is the idea. So these soul traps are sucking different individuals from different planes and planting them on this plane, and they have to adapt and they have to survive, and eventually they evolve. And Memnarch is shutting out Karn from being able to come back to his world. So Karn is sending mental like messages to people who are on Mirrodin to do things to stop Memnarch. This results in Glissa, Slowbad, Raksha, and Bosch all going to fight Memnarch in an awesome saga where they get the Cauldra and the Cauldric artifacts, which are these sword, shield, and helm, which are these like super legendary weapons. When assembled, they create this giant avatar that they're going to use to attack Memnarch. They go to the core to attack Memnarch, and Memnarch uses mind control to control the avatar before revealing that he wants to kill Glissa to take the spark out of her chest, because Glissa's actually got a latent Planeswalker spark. Then they're able to escape when the green sun erupts out of the plane in the sky, and Bosch stays behind to fight Memnarch to allow Glissa and Slowbad to escape. Glissa and Slowbad go and escape back to the forest to the elves to try to create a resistance, but the elves are trying to blame them for killing Glissa's parents. Glissa's like, no, it wasn't me, it was the levelers. They also broke my leg, I swear. And then right before they're about to execute her, the levelers actually attack the elves, allowing Slowbad and Glissa to escape. Then when they come back, the elves are like, oh, you're right. It must have been the levelers, because that was pretty scary. Then they allow them to create a resistance force, which then goes and fights Memnarch on the darkest part of Mirrodin, because now it's no longer Argentum. At this point, it's been twisted into Mirrodin. They go to fight Mirrodin, and on Mirrodin, they go and they confront what used to be Geth, and Geth has been defeated and replaced by Memnarch's minion, who then has a huge trap for them. Glissa falls into the trap, and Slowbad does as well. Slowbad is then tortured. His limbs are amputated, and he's plugged into a giant machine where he's able to control different things in the plane. And he's tasked with building this giant machine out of the world for Memnarch, capable of sucking the spark out of his friend Glissa. Glissa is able to escape, but not with Slowbad. Slowbad is stuck, tortured, and plugged into the machine. Memnarch creates a bunch of Memnites, which then he sends all around the plane to allow Slowbad to complete his plan. All of them have a linked consciousness with him. So this goblin is plugged into this machine, constantly working on artifacts, tinkering on the world, making it a machine, while on the outside, while in his brain, also controlling things on the outside of the world, making it a machine. Slowbad toils for 5 years before Glissa comes back, and it's literally on like the week that it's done, Glissa comes back and confronts and like finds Slowbad, realizes Slowbad has been like creating what Memnarch wanted for 5 years, attacks him, falls with him into the core of the engine that he created. Then Glissa's spark is sucked out, but not put in Memnarch's body. Instead, it's transferred accidentally to Slowbad, finds all of his limbs magically restored, and finds himself with godlike power as a planeswalker. Now, as a planeswalker, he has the ability to planeswalk around the multiverse and be a goblin planeswalker, the first ever goblin planeswalker. Meets Karn. Karn offers to take him under his wing and mentor him, and Slowbad is really lonely because he's always been ostracized by his people. He was always different from the other goblins, and so he decides Glissa was his friend, and he would rather not be alive if Glissa's not alive. So he sacrifices his spark and allows Karn to use it to revive all the people on Mirrodin who were killed while fighting Memnarch. And all of them are revived, and Slowbad dies. And Karn then goes, and Memnarch's been defeated, so he cleanses the plane, and he doesn't realize it though, but while he's walking around, he's accidentally leaking Phyrexian oil. You see, his Heartstone, when Urza first made him, was given to him by Yantia, who was a Phyrexian sleeper agent. He didn't know this though, so Karn's heart has slowly been growing with Phyrexian oil, and he drips it all over the core of Phyrexia, corrupting the plane and slowly twisting it from Muradin into new Phyrexia. And over time, all of the beings that exist on it slowly turn from part metallic, part flesh to fully metallic machines in what's called the Phyrexian completion, where The oil slowly turns you into a machine, and then all of these machines work together. There's 5 different colors that are represented by 5 different predators. There's Urbrask the red, Vornklex the green, Elishnorn the white, Shieldred the black, and Jingitaxis the blue. And all of them have different realms on Phyrexia. Now, in the war between these growing Phyrexian forces, because it starts off really slow. It starts as like a slow corruption, right? There's pools of oil, really small pools of oil. But if you step in it, you slowly get corrupted and turned into this metallic monster. And the forces of the Phyrexians are hellbent on perfecting the creatures of Mirrodin. And the Mirrodin forces are fighting the best that they can. However, the Phyrexians are tireless and monstrous in their desires and in their fighting capabilities. And so eventually the Mirrodin forces are overthrown by the Phyrexians, and the plane of Mirrodin becomes New Phyrexia. Now, New Phyrexia is just New Phyrexia, right? There was Phyrexia. It was destroyed by the Thran and thrown into a time pocket. Came out, went back in, came out, went back in. Now, the New Phyrexia is just Argentum turned into Mirrodin, turned into New Phyrexia, and they're planning an interstellar invasion all over the multiverse. Now, there's 3 things that they need. 1, they need a planar bridge. 2, they need something to allow them to connect things to different multiverses so that they can create because if they have one machine, what they can do is they can replicate that machine. But what they need is they need something that has ties to all the different multiverses. And finally, they need power. They need a lot of power. So what they're doing is they're sending spies. They're sending perfected planeswalkers, sleeper agents across the multiverse to create these tools, to create these things that they need for their grand invasion. Tezzeret and Johnny are their biggest sleeper agents. Tezzeret, under the guise of working for Nicol Bolas, is setting up the stage for a massive Phyrexian invasion. And Johnny, who seems to be a pure white or green planeswalker, actually has been corrupted by Phyrexian oil a long time ago and has been acting on their behalf for a long time. Now, the Phyrexian invasion of the multiverse comes when, in a multi-step process, predators are found on different planes, and we don't understand how they got there. There's no way that these non-planeswalker entities should be on these different planes, but they are, and they're questing for different things. They're taking over parts of different planes, gaining certain artifacts, and trying to do what they can do. Now, the eventual war comes to the head when something called the Realm Breaker is found, or Realm Breaker, the Realm Breaker, Realm Breaker. They basically find a giant tree. Yeah, so they invade the multiverse because they find a giant tree that has roots in all of the planes. And so what they can do is they can use this planeswalker named Ren to meld with the tree and then open all these portals in all these different places. Or what they could do is they could take a machine and they could replicate it. So what they do is they create this machine that replicates what Ren is able to do, and they corrupt this tree to be this giant machine that can open planar bridges on all of the planes, and the Phyrexians invade all of the planes at the same time. All the planes that we love get invaded by the same, or at the same exact time. Okay. And then they don't have a lot of good pictures for this, but they invade all across the multiverse, and it's literally all the characters that we've met in all of Magic's history versus all the Phyrexians. And the Phyrexians are about to win when Karn